Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Schmitt, and I've spent the last 16 years teaching family consumer sciences at Hackett High School. It's in Northwest Arkansas near Fort Smith, and I've taught pretty much every subject there is to teach involving FCS. Recently, I accepted a position at Texas Tech University, so I'll be starting that in the fall as an assistant professor of practice in their family and consumer science department. I've been in their PhD program since 2017 and I'm currently writing my dissertation, and its focus has been on what I'm going to talk to you about today, but the technology usage in our students and in our teens, how it's affecting them, and what we can do about it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and I will turn my camera off. But again, my program today is going to be called Today's Teens and Technology Addiction, what the evidence is showing and how we as FCS teachers can help. So it is a major issue in our country and worldwide, honestly. And we see it from younger and younger ages, but we see how our students act if we try to take away their technology and their devices. We see anger almost, we see that need for having it in their hands and almost those withdrawal symptoms, because it is an actual addiction. It's becoming an addiction. But I really noticed this after I had taught for a couple of years, started seeing these changes in my students. So I really started noticing a change. There was a lack of focus, more distraction, more difficulty in motivation. And ironically, what do you guys think was released in 2007? A couple of years after I started teaching, well, the smartphone was released. And these drastic changes concerned me, but also intrigued me as an educator and a researcher. So I started to dive deeper into just how much our youth are being affected. In doing so, I wondered, what could I, as an FCS educator, do? I truly believe that our classes are a perfect platform to provide instruction and intervention in the subject matter. And after we discuss some of what research is showing, I'm going to show you ways that we can help and that we can make an impact and a difference in our students. So the first thing we need to think about is how our teens and our youth have been exposed to technology. So there is a really good book by Jean Twenge called iGen, and I'll quote her, and she writes, born in 1995 and later, they grew up with cell phones, had an Instagram page before they started high school, and don't remember a time before the internet. They have had access to all the technological advances that previous generations were introduced to. The television era of the baby boomers, the computer revolution of Generation X, and the internet explosion, social media, constant connectivity, and on-demand entertainment and communications for the millennials. Not only have iGeners had all technological access, but the oldest were 10 when the iPhone was introduced, and their teen years have been filled with mobile devices, Wi-Fi, and high bandwidth cell service. Older generations had to adapt to advances and changes, while iGen's social media, constant connectivity, and on-demand entertainment are automatically assumed with no adaptation needed. So as mentioned, today's youth have never known a time without technology. It has always been accessible to them. They've been exposed their entire lives through various means. The process starts with young children as they observe their parents' use of technology, and as they grow, they become active participants themselves, whether through usage in school or for personal use. Many youths are active on cell phones and computers. They use apps and features. We have several that are involved in online gaming platforms through gaming devices. And there's so many things that that little device in their hands can do for them in a typical day. So for example, they might use technology or apps to do the following: monitor sleep patterns, get a ride, navigate a location, get updates on news, celebrities, or sports, send money to a friend online, schedule dates or appointments, order food, check the timing of a bus route, buy a pair of shoes, watch a movie, and check homework or grades. It's the last thing they look at before they go to bed, and the first thing they look at when they wake up, always within an arm's reach. Adolescents' access to the world is literally in their hands, and this usage continues to increase as new devices and applications are developed. So some of the statistics we're going to look at, and these statistics are referring to teen usage, but I also want to kind of tell you about what they're showing for young children as well and how it starts. So it's starting earlier and earlier. In fact, 58 minutes per day is the average usage of time a 2 to 4-year-old spends on mobile devices, and 46% of children under 2 have used a mobile device at least once, despite the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendations that children under 2 don't use any screen media. Other studies have actually shown that children with higher levels of screen time between 2 and 5 showed more significant delays in development across a range of important measures, including language, problem solving, and social interaction. So this is starting, like I said, earlier and earlier, and these numbers just get higher and higher as the child gets older, and that's going to be reflected in these statistics on your slide. So 88% of teens report access to a desktop or laptop computer, but today's teens are more likely to be a one-device generation, most likely using the smartphone. Pew Research Center conducted a survey in 2018, and they said that according to the study, 95% of teens had access to smartphones, and this is regardless of gender, age, race, socioeconomic background. All of our students are getting access to these technologies and these devices. And 45% said that they are almost constantly on, while 44% said that they go online several times a day. Okay, more of the statistics, although both generations, or both genders rather, use technology, it seems that there is a little bit of discrepancy in how much genders use. So 50% of teenage girls say that they're near constant users, while 39% of teenage boys are near constant users. And these statistics actually equate to an average of more than 6 hours daily of screen time being used just for entertainment purposes alone. So like your social media, YouTube, things like that. So, you know, when we're thinking about this past year specifically, how they were doing all of their normal online entertainment, and then in addition to that, we were putting them on Chromebooks all day long, or on, you know, laptops all day long for their schoolwork. I don't know about you, but I saw a lot of burnout in my students. It was almost like overstimulation, but that was affecting them as well. So when you're adding up the purposes of just entertainment plus education, that equals several hours of that technology usage. Okay, although we could go into many areas of technology, for the purpose of this presentation, we'll mainly be covering social media, as it has shown to have many more effects on youth. So various research studies continue to show that teens favor social media apps as their primary communication and entertainment platforms. And social media is where teens live, and their usage of social media apps is evolving just as fast as the apps are being developed. So what is this? According to Quinta and John, it can be defined as an electronic form of communication that provides a space for social engagement and interaction where users can both consume and create content. So some statistics about usage. As far as these stats, 81% of teens use social media, and nearly 3/4 of those surveyed check social media almost daily, while 38% check it constantly, which means about a few times an hour. Honestly, though, how many of us would be in that constantly checking category? I mean, honestly, is it a few times an hour, or do we do that even more, even ourselves? So think about how many more that statistic would probably be showing nowadays. Okay, and then how are they using social media? There's a lot of different purposes that they're using it for. First of all, is communication. We know that it's really taking the place of a lot of their in-person communication. Also, their expression of self, the sharing of experiences and ideas, planning, current events, and gaming. All right, so this slide is showing some of the popular social media apps. And of course, notice it says 2018. So these are a little bit different now. So I am going to add one, and I'm sure you guys can think of the one that I'm going to add, but I'm going to give you a little description of these apps if you are not familiar with them. Okay, so the first one is Snapchat. And it's an image messaging social platform. It enables you to chat with friends using pictures. It takes Instagram a step further. So it's based on sharing images presented as an occasion for comments, and the images disappear after a few seconds. However, so things that appear on Snapchat may seem to be gone forever. As it happens, most devices can capture any images that appear on its screen. And while Snapchat now notifies users when someone takes a screen grab of an image they put up, some apps allow users to circumvent this feature. And as a result, the Snapchat is even more likely to lure teens into thinking an inappropriate or embarrassing picture will never be seen again. And that's something that hopefully a lot of our teens are learning more about. But just because it's apparently disappearing after you do it does not mean that it's gone away forever. And that's something that we desperately need to teach our young people, that anything you share on the internet is not disappearing. It's going to be there forever. No matter if you deleted it or not, anyone could take an easy screenshot of something to where it could be detrimental to you. All right, number 2 is YouTube. So this one's been popular for a while, and it's even popular a lot with our younger kids as well. There's even a kids YouTube, which has some definite security things that you need to be concerned about. But of course, that's a video sharing service. Kids will sit there and watch YouTube videos forever, even if it's just watching other kids do things, they'll watch them forever. Okay, the third one is Instagram. So that's a social networking platform based on sharing photos and videos. It's a much more popular among teens, and it's based primarily on sharing images, which people in a user's network can then comment on. Because it's based on images, Instagram can tempt teens to post embarrassing or inappropriate images online, but it has similar privacy settings to Facebook, which means that a user can exercise some control over who can see their content. Of course, most of us know this one, that is Facebook, and it's the largest social networking site. Many teens will have a profile on Facebook without using it much, which is interesting because they are saying that it's not a teen's favorite social media app. Of course, Instagram, and there's one more that we'll talk about again. Facebook is becoming more popular with older generations than some of the younger. But, you know, a lot of teens are still going to use it for some things. The platform allows for interactions with strangers, and its various levels of privacy and multiple means of sharing can make what seems like private interactions more public than a user may realize. Okay, the next one is Pinterest, which most teachers love, but there are some inherent dangers with this as well. But it's photo sharing and visual bookmarking. It enables you to find ideas and projects and save them. Twitter is next. And it's a social networking site that allows you to post short messages with a limited number of characters. Like Facebook, Twitter isn't the most popular teen social media platform. And while teens should continue to take care with it, and parents should be aware that there's no way to prevent teens from coming across adult material and no particularly effective means of stopping harassment, it's tamer than some of the other online outlets. And then the last one is called WhatsApp, and it is an instant messaging platform. So the last one we'll talk about here in a minute, but it's important to keep in mind that most apps are going to have some inherent risks. Messages and pictures on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram are not easily deleted after being received or sent. It's becoming common for kids to actually create fake accounts on Instagram called Finstas. And according from a story for the Today Show, teens' main reasoning for creating these accounts is for avoiding a parent's prying eyes. However, they could also be making them to show a different side of themselves, which is scary, one that might display illegal activities or activities that would not be acceptable to future colleges and employers, in addition to parents. Even apps that have been around for a while, like Pinterest, can have questionable material, not only in a sexual matter, but also material concerning self-harm, suicide, and other violence. And then one that wasn't mentioned, which I'm sure you guys know which one I'm thinking about, but it's TikTok. It's very popular now. TikToks are short form videos ranging from a few seconds to 1 minute. They run the gamut from dance videos, video diaries, viral challenges, DIYs, or anything that immediately captures attention. It's unique as it offers use of sound bites of other existing TikToks, and they can also play with built-in video and sound effects to recreate viral TikTok trends and challenges. In the US, the vast majority of TikTok users are below 30 years old, and research published this April by the Pew Research Center shows that 48% of US adults between 18 and 29 actually use TikTok. So that's another very popular social media outlet. Okay, one of the things that is concerning with teens' use of technology is that there's not a lot of strict regulation. It continues to be an issue. There actually was an act called the COPPA Act. It stands for Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It was passed in 1998 to try to enforce regulations concerning child's privacy online. And basically, this is what it said. It imposes certain requirements on operators of websites or online services directed to children under 13 years of age and on operators of other websites or online services that have actual knowledge that they are collecting personal information from a child under 13. So that's why a lot of times when you are signing up for social media apps, they're going to say, okay, you have to be at least 13 in order to sign up. However, you know, how many of us know kids that are under 13 that have a Facebook account or Instagram or Twitter? There's not going to be really a strict way to regulate this usage. So there's been other things that they're trying to do. In 2020, a bill known as the Preventing Real Online Threats Endangering Children Today, the Protect Kids Act, was introduced, which would extend all existing COPPA consent requirements to users under the age of 16 instead of 13. And this would also include mobile apps and add information collected from geolocation features and biometric data. So if all of these could be passed and regulated, that would be amazing. But again, how are they going to regulate all of these things? So it's something that we definitely need to be more proactive about. So why is all of this significant? How is the constant exposure, the types of activities that youth are using technology for, and the lack of regulation affecting our youth? To understand the issue of this, you really need to understand the development of this period of life and how aspects of this development can actually influence how the technology is impacting them. So the adolescent period, early scholars define this as 14 to 24, but because of an earlier initiation of puberty nowadays and the end of high school, because a lot of times they're going to break these ages into significant events. So end of high school, usually around 18. So now they're defining this period as ages 10 to 8 instead. Okay, so it's known as the stage of curiosity, adventure, impulsiveness, intense emotions, and elation of moods. It's a period of rapid physical, social, and emotional changes that includes the phase of transition between childhood and early adulthood. So lots and lots happening, not only physically, but also emotionally, socially. So there's a lot of ways that adding technology to this mix can impact an adolescent. So one of the aspects of emotional development during this period is that of adolescent egocentrism. So it's when adolescents have difficulty distinguishing their thinking about their thoughts from their thinking about the thoughts of others. And egocentrism is a term that we use, of course, in lifespan development. We use it when we're talking about toddlers, thinking that everything revolves around them. They're thinking everything belongs to them. Adolescents can be known as the second toddlerhood because they also have these thoughts of, you know, everybody's thinking about them. What are they thinking about me? Are they judging me? So they can't distinguish their own thinking about what others are thinking. They think everybody's thinking the same way as they are. So they tend to base decisions and behavior on having an imaginary audience. And this is a perfect, example of social media. They think about themselves and how they might appear to others. And again, that egocentrism, they're thinking that others are thinking about them just as much as they're thinking about themselves. And, how is posting this picture going to get, likes, or, how is it going to affect what people think of me? Are they going to give me more likes if I, wear this outfit, or if I pose this way? So they're constantly thinking about how what they're doing is going to affect what people think about them. So again, social media could definitely contribute to increased feelings of being the center of an imaginary audience. And this, of course, can lead to a lot more self-consciousness. And again, we're seeing a lot more anxiety, depression, things like that. So just that constant worried about what people are thinking is definitely affecting our students. Socially, there's also implications with the increased use of social media. Adolescent preference for face-to-face communication has declined substantially. Only 32% of teens say their favorite way to communicate with friends is actually in person. And even when teens are together, there's a high likelihood of distraction from cell phones. So, and we've seen this too. You go to a restaurant or anywhere and you see a table full of people, and like how many of them are actually interacting face to face, and how many of them have their heads down looking at their phones while they're actually near people. So those phones are a constant distraction. And a lot of times they're, a hindrance to actually interacting and communicating face to face. So studies have shown that even if a device is on silent mode, many people repeatedly check for text or voice messages. Even a mobile device's presence may cause distraction and thoughts outside a teen's immediate context. And that's important to remember. They've done experiments on this, that they would have, students put them up and then, count how many times someone is trying to get a hold of them, or how many times they want to check their phone. They had to tally that. So even if it's on silent, like, what we're supposed to do in our classrooms, or even put away, there's that constant anxiety, that constant need to want to see who's trying to get a hold of me, what are they saying about me, what are they doing on Facebook, that constant longing to need to check that social media. The brain of an adolescent is also very important to consider. So it's a significant factor in understanding why technology can have such a tremendous impact during this time of life. So they have more synapses than adults, which can lead to a higher capacity to learn, which is good, but also this can lead to a higher vulnerability to addiction or the effects of substance abuse or even stress. So, a lot of times, in the past we talk about, drug addiction, alcohol addiction in teens, but they can become addicted to their technology as well. And they're more likely to become addicted to technology at this age. So the part of the brain that actually controls addictive behavior is actually more active in adolescence, and it can result in this addiction being harder, stronger, longer, and faster. And that's why they would always say, the younger a teen is, if they start smoking or they started drinking, then that addiction is going to be harder for them to break as they get older. Same thing with technology. The younger they start, the harder it's going to be for them to break those habits. So how is the tech industry taking advantage of these aspects of brain development? The last time you used social media, what kind of ads did you see? Did they appeal to you? Did they draw you in? What about games? So I will personally admit, for myself, I am a sucker for Candy Crush Soda. And, I don't even know what level I'm on in the thousands, but if I don't play for a while, what does that game do? They say, oh, welcome back. We're going to give you 30 minutes of unlimited lives because you've been away and we want you to come back and play our game for hours and hours. So is that a coincidence? Most likely it's not. It is that tech taking advantage of that addictive behavior of its apps. They know how to draw you in. So they've actually designed their products to draw in users and influence them to spend long periods using social media and video game sites. And when these perfect conditions for strong addiction in adolescents are paired with persuasive technology designed to influence human thought and behavior, it's not surprising why we're seeing so much of this behavior in today's teens. Another part that we need to talk about in the adolescent brain is the frontal lobes. So not only is the adolescent brain more prone to addiction, but it's also more prone to behaviors such as risk-taking while lacking rational thinking and good decision-making skills. This factor is significant because the part of the brain that controls these behaviors, the frontal lobes, are not fully developed during this time. And this can explain why adolescents, they're more likely to take risks, even if they're not being pressured by other people. So that could be like your technology addiction. You know, they may not be having friends say, oh, you know, get on technology, but just being on it themselves because of the fact that those frontal lobes are not fully connected. They're not thinking rationally. They're more likely to become addicted and more likely to take risks. Interesting thing, ever wonder why teens tend to be so dramatic? While the frontal lobes are not fully developed, the sections of the brain that control emotions are fully developed at adolescence. Therefore, adolescents tend to be more emotional and often respond to things that others see as really inconsequential. So combining those factors with the internet's influence often leads to even more amplified stress and anxiety during the adolescent period. So all of that brain chemistry is working together really against the adolescent if they're being exposed to too much of a bad thing. Okay, so why is this important as far as a youth development issue? The increase of technology usage among the adolescent population in conjunction with the developmental factors during this period makes this a very relevant area of concern for parents and professionals. Higher incidences of mental illness, including depression, anxiety, and social isolation, are growing among this age group, and there are possible correlations between this factor and higher use of social media. So overall, anybody who works with youth, and that can even include parents, we really need to stay educated and up to date on what our youth are becoming engaged in and how can we support them to try to use social media in a positive way, because not all social media aspects are bad, and we'll talk about positive and negatives. But if we are not trying to help them navigate how they're using it, they're more likely to suffer some of those negative effects. So we are going to look at some of the negative aspects first. So again, and we hear more about negative than positive. There are some positive though, but some of the negative we'll talk about are cyberbullying, an increase in conflict, some of the educational consequences, mental health consequences, sexting, privacy concerns, exposure to online predators, and then the last is lack of sleep. So the first one is cyberbullying. It's probably one of the most talked about concerns presently. According to Gwenta and John, it's the use of electronic forms of contact to inflict willful and repeated harm to others. And there are some unique challenges of this type of bullying. First of all, the speed at which information can spread online. One text can spread so quickly. One picture can spread so quickly. The anonymous nature of it is also a concern, and the complexity in which the bully and victim roles can actually shift online. So in a study from 2015, the average prevalence of cyberbullying in adolescents was 23%, and many social media platforms can be used for cyberbullying, which is definitely why social media should be a concern, especially in schools. But blogs, Twitter, social networking sites, message boards, any of these could be used as outlets for bullying. In most cases, the youth actually know their perpetrator, but the anonymous nature can be one of the biggest challenges of the issue. About 10 to 20% of cases have an anonymous bully, and cyberbullying is significantly associated with an increased likelihood of depression. According to the Pew Research Center, 31% of teens who use social media actually endorse fighting with friends over something that happened online. And again, this is, they become very emotional over things that we might see as inconsequential, but that is, their brain kind of working against them. But 31% would endorse that fighting over something online. And 58% of teens say they have actually unfriended someone on a social network site who they previously considered a friend. Okay, the next thing that is a negative effect would be the increase of conflict. So teens tend to be, especially females, tend to be the main perpetrators of increased conflict, more of the drama, things like that. It seems to go hand in hand with teen girls. But 68% say they have witnessed others create drama for many of the behaviors adults consider bullying. Okay, the next one is our educational consequences. And this is one that I'm huge on because I really started seeing these changes in motivation and all of that in my students. That was very concerning. But not only can it affect your personal life, but it can also have effects on a teen's education. Overall, there's a negative correlation between school outcomes and the use of electronic media. Much of this involves trying to multitask. Teens think that they're their best at multitasking, but actually when they're trying to multitask using like their handheld devices and during schoolwork, most of the time that's not going to work in their favor. They're not effective at doing both equally well. The distraction of technology has been a significant issue in schools presently, and schools are being creative in their approach, but and we're seeing some good effects, to try to get, if they're getting rid of some of this technology usage. It says consequently, studies are showing that students without these distractions are performing better in several different areas. They tend to write down 62% more information, are able to recall more detailed information, and even have a second to have scored a full letter grade and a half higher on a multiple choice test than those who are actively using technology. So getting rid of those distractions is huge and improving that educational attainment. Okay, mental health consequences. It's been a huge concern in our teens, and poor mental health continues to increase among younger populations. In 2016, in a study, adolescents who were actually high social media users were twice as likely to have received a diagnosis of depression and anxiety or needed treatment for mental health issues. So this is something that we're seeing a lot of. So the higher their usage amounts, the more likely they're to suffer for depression and anxiety. And we'll talk about the experience. The experiences that they're having is also going to make a huge difference. So they've actually coined some terms for this. They've come up with Facebook depression and Facebook envy in association with the effects of social media use. So depression, Facebook depression, is a depression that begins with an extreme amount of social media usage and subsequent development of the classic symptoms of depression. And Facebook envy develops as users compare themselves with others and can lead to damaging life satisfaction. So whenever they're having to develop their own terms associated with mental health and social media, you know that there's a problem there. A 2015 study found both Facebook depression and Facebook envy common among heavy users, and both were predictors for depression. So again, the higher the usage, we're seeing the more likelihood of the mental illness or the mental health effects. It is crucial to know that it is mainly the negative social media experiences leading to the condition. So in 2019, a study found that every 10% increase in negative interactions on social media made study participants more likely to feel lonely, which is crazy because we know that social media was actually developed to try to connect people. However, we know that it's not always a positive interaction or experience, so that's actually increasing their likelihood of depressive symptoms. And then another study found that adolescents who were high users were twice as likely to have received a diagnosis of depression and anxiety or needed treatment. So again, the high users are more likely to show symptoms and also more likely to be diagnosed for an issue. Okay, as mentioned previously, the teenage brain does not yet contain the connections that aid in rational thinking skills. This factor is evident in the online behavior of sexting, which is electronic communication of nude, semi-nude, provocative images, as well as erotic text messages. So we're seeing this in approximately 18 to 28% of adolescent users. And they say also that teens who sext are more likely to partake in sexual activity. Many teens see this as maybe an innocent type of activity. They don't really think about the consequences. They don't think about how quickly images can be distributed without permission and how difficult or impossible it is to remove content once shared or posted. So victims can face embarrassment and humiliation as well as emotional distress. And also, of course, those that share this information or these images can also face serious consequences, such as school suspension and legal action like felony child pornography or distribution of child pornography. So it's a very, very serious issue. And, our kids really need to know, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Any image that you would not be comfortable having on a device or, anyone being able to see, just don't even do it, because there's still going to be that likelihood, even if you think you're going to be with that person forever. You just never know. You never know who's going to share. Okay, and then many younger users of social media are naive when it comes to factors such as privacy. So, a lot of these platforms encourage you to share your thoughts. What are you thinking right now? What are you doing? It encourages sharing of so many different things. So we're seeing some adolescents share information such as cell phone numbers, school names, relationship status, pictures, even, some of the innocent things, which I'll be honest, like the little cartoon character thing. I did that with my family, but there was even stories of that, how, people can get information from those things. So it's very, very important that we communicate to our students. You just don't want to share any information that might give like a predator information about you. And interesting fact that most adolescents do choose to enable private settings on Facebook, but 60% of teen Twitter accounts are made public. So although they may be paying attention to safety or privacy on some apps, they may not necessarily be looking at that on other apps. Okay, even enabling privacy settings on social media is not a guarantee for protection. So they need to be aware that anything they post online is out there forever, even if deleted on their end. Screenshots can easily and quickly be taken by others. Platforms continue to make efforts to protect user privacy, but violations and unwelcome content sharing are a constant risk that users need to consider. Okay, the next negative is the exposure to online predators. So it's concerning, to think about user privacy, but it can also lead to a more severe matter of exposure to online predators. So according to the Online Teen Safety Guide, a predator is a person who works to gain a youth's confidence, either in order to build an inappropriate relationship or to lure them into inappropriate behavior. And approximately 750,000 predators are online looking to start inappropriate relationships with teens at any given time. It's very scary because you never know what a person's real identity is. I mean, there are so many people that will have, fake profiles or disguise themselves as a much younger age to lure these kids in. So what happens is that these predators will gradually gather information about the teens, enough to, harass them or even blackmail them or violate their privacy. So by doing this, many have been lured into abductions, sexual situations, and subjected to sexual assault as a result. Okay, the last negative effect we'll look at is the lack of sleep. And this one's very, very interesting. But adolescents, they're still in a rapid stage of development, which requires more rest. In fact, most sleep experts recommend at least 9 hours of sleep for teens. Less than 7 is considered inadequate. Although more sleep is recommended, it seems as though there are many factors that work against this necessity. However, 44% of cell phone owning teens say that they regularly keep their phones on and active at night, leading to sleep that can be interrupted constantly by calls, texts, notifications. On my phone, I have a bedtime setting. So after a certain time at night, it won't it'll say we're going to silence all notifications until your alarm goes off. But I mean, a lot of teens, they're not doing that because they want to constantly be engaged, but it's definitely affecting their sleep. One factor that affects teen sleep is the release of the sleep hormone called melatonin, which of course you can take as an over-the-counter supplement, but our body actually naturally releases that. So do you ever wonder why adults tend to get sleepy earlier in the evening while most teens seem to be night owls? Studies have actually shown that melatonin is released in an adult's body sometime between 8 and 10 p.m., while in teens, this hormone is not actually released until anywhere from 10 to as late as 1 a.m. Now let's consider the current issue, screen time before bed. When you add the use of electronics, the release of melatonin is affected even more. The blue light that's emitted by smartphones and tablets stimulates daylight, and that can inhibit the release of this melatonin. Not only that, but technology also stimulates the brain, making it more difficult to fall asleep. Remember the earlier stat we discussed too, that even if they do fall asleep, 44% of them are saying that they're regularly keeping their phones on and active, which leads to the sleep disturbances. All right, so now that we've talked about some of the negative, we are going to look at some of the positive effects of social media. There are some. So some of those would include increased collaboration and tolerance, access to some social support networks, health communication and promotion, and self-esteem and well-being. Okay, so using social media for collaboration and tolerance, it can allow users to have exposure to new ideas and experiences outside of the classroom or their social norm. Social media can also be used to stay informed of current events and as a tool for promoting civic engagement. Overall, exposure to different groups can allow an adolescent a chance to learn, understand, and empathize with others who may be different from themselves. And then not only can it provide that exposure to others, but it can also foster an environment of inclusion while avoiding stigmatization for certain populations such as the LGBTQI, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, or intersex, and also those with ongoing illnesses, conditions, and disabilities. Those with serious mental illnesses can also find comfort in coping skills from group networks, and social media platforms can be a way to reach many difficult to engage people. For health communication and promotion, it can also be possible using social media. Groups can be a source of sensitive health information. With careful selection, users can find groups employed to improve health and advocate for healthier behaviors. And joining these can give social support and help with accountability, leading to higher success rates. But it's important if they're using these for health communication or promotion that we educate students how to find appropriate information. So it's essential to check for validity. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, there are 5 quick questions that we can ask when visiting an online health site or downloading a new health app. So first of all, who runs or created the site or app? Can you trust them? What is the site or app promoting or offering? Do its claims seem too good to be true? When was its information written or reviewed? Is it up to date? Where does the information come from? Is it based on scientific research? And why does the site or app exist? Is it trying to sell you something? So really important, again, health information. You can find a variety online. You can find the good and the bad and the ugly, but just make sure that we educate our students to know how to find that reliable information. Most federal government agencies, large professional organizations, and well-known medical schools are going to give you reliable information. The last benefit, finding with social media, can actually have conflicting research results. So this includes the area of self-esteem and well-being. So we talked about it before in the negative aspect. Negative experiences and feedback can lead to some of the risks discussed, but positive feedback can actually enhance adolescent self-esteem and well-being. Another benefit is for those who lack social skills, so it can offer this alternative route for communication and a virtual supportive community for those who find difficulty in interacting face-to-face. Okay, so now that we've discussed factors affecting our youth for technology and social media, let's discuss how we as FCS teachers can have an impact. So FCS, I believe, is the perfect platform for educating others about these critical issues. We have so many courses to where we can apply this information. Our human development area addresses many of the aspects. Think about what classes you can implement digital wellness education into. Just some that I thought about while doing this presentation: lifespan development, our pre-educator courses, facts, human relations. There are so many different classes where you could implement digital wellness. And our youth can also become involved through career and technical organizations like FCCLA. It's a great platform where they can develop projects to educate their peers as well as parents, doing programs and projects. And you can develop your own digital wellness program or use some that are already developed in order to educate others about the topic. There are a lot of free ones out there. NetSmart is a great one. And I'm going to tell you about another one here in a minute. But we need to teach our young people how to use social media as well as all technology in positive ways so they can reap the benefits that we discussed. So I'm going to show you my recommendation of a ready-made program and give you information about an opportunity to where you can implement this and help me out with some research that I'm doing as well. So Intentionally Unplugged is actually a brand created by a fellow FCS teacher. She is from New York. Her name is Denise D'Angelo Rowland. She's a teacher, an author, a wife, mother, and advocate for digital health. And she states the following on her website as her purpose for starting her brand. My hope in starting Intentionally Unplugged is to help families connect in meaningful ways. Intentionally Unplugged is not anti-screen or anti-technology, but rather an approach to teaching our children about how we can consciously carve out time for human connection. With a generation of kids being raised with screens, we need to start this conversation early and learn how we can disconnect to connect. So she launched this brand in 2020, and you can actually access her curriculum online for free. She also includes how this curriculum is tied specifically to our national FCS standards. Another benefit of this program being offered and written by an FCS teacher. So all of this research that I'm sharing with you, this has led to my current dissertation study on the effects of technology on adolescent social and emotional health. So what I'm going to be doing is studying perceptions with 3 different populations. So I'm going to look at perceptions of social and emotional health from students, from parents, and from Arkansas FCS teachers. So I do need some participants if anybody is interested, if this intrigues you. I'm going to be trying to recruit at least 10 Arkansas FCS teachers to use. As far as what you'll be responsible for, we'll have a couple of focus group sessions so that we can go over what all you need to do as far as study instructions, and if you have any questions or any suggestions about curriculum, anything like that. If you choose to participate, you're actually going to choose 2 classes that you'll be using. One class you're going to use as a control class, so you will not be implementing the digital wellness curriculum, and then you're going to use one of them will be your intervention class. So you would want to implement this Intentionally Unplugged curriculum. And then what you would do is, for both of those classes, we would do pre-surveys with your students and also the parents. You would implement the curriculum in the intervention class, and then you would also do some post-surveys. And you would be included too on those post-surveys and those pre-surveys. But we're looking at, again, the perceptions of how it's affecting social and emotional health, but then we're also looking at effectiveness of implementing digital wellness curriculum in FCS. So if you successfully complete requirements of the study, you will be rewarded with Amazon gift cards, because it will take some dedication of time and contribution to the field. You would also be acknowledged, of course, in my dissertation for helping me out. So there are some rewards and benefits to that. But honestly, just as an FCS professional, just thinking about the contribution that you could be making to this study that's so timely and relevant of how technology and social media is affecting our youth, I think is very important. So if you think you might be interested, please email me at my new email address that's shown, melanie.schmitt@ttu.edu. And I will also keep in touch on the Facebook page for Arkansas FCS teachers. And I'm going to try to stay on to the Arkansas listserv as well, if they will allow me to do that. So overall, I just want to thank all of you for your time. And I want to thank Arkansas FCS for 16 amazing years in the program. I feel like I could not be moving on to this position that I'm taking if I hadn't had the experiences that I'd had through Arkansas FCS and FCCLA and all of those amazing things that we've been doing here in Arkansas. So again, thank you for your time. And if you think you might be interested in participating this fall in the study, then please let me know. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.